TV6 investigates the impacts of climate change across Upper Michigan. Climate change is defined by scientists both locally and globally as a change in global or regional climate patterns causing environmental impact. Now, to many climate researchers, whether that be among the National Weather Service, Michigan State University Extension, or organizations like the Superior Watershed Partnership, the Upper Peninsula has become what they call a climate haven, a place that avoids the worst effects of natural disasters and the potential of having the right infrastructure to support more people coming here to enjoy it. Now, I spoke to experts in the region to find out what climate change means for Upper Michigan and how the impact in the past compares to what's happening around us right now. Climate. Whether you are looking at smaller bodies of water like Teal Lake outside of Ishpeming and Negaunee, to the larger bodies of water like, of course, Lake Superior, all the way down to little salamanders, the blue spotteds out at Presque Isle, climate impacts everything. However, experts say climate change is being felt across the entire Upper Peninsula, whether you can see it or not.
The fact of the matter is our climate has always been changing.
Sunshine and ice, freshwater and forests, everything in this region is connected to Michigan's largest Great Lake. For researchers like meteorologist Matt Zika at the National Weather Service, it's all a part of what makes the UP a laboratory for studying the climate.
We have enough data there over that long period of time to say there's something going on here. I mean, if it was just 1 or 2 or 3 years, that's one thing. But once we start to get a conglomerate of 15, 20 years of data and it's showing that sign, it's a clear indication something's going on here locally.
Zika says while meteorologists are constantly studying the UP's day-to-day weather, the key to noticing signs of trouble on the horizon is defining the impact of climate change locally.
And over the last 20 years alone, where we're seeing the biggest climate shift is our summers tend to hang on longer now into the early fall, into September and October. And our winters are hanging on a little bit longer into the spring now. 19 of the last 20 Septembers, our temperatures have averaged above normal. I think 15 of the last 20 Octobers, our temperatures have been above normal.
And shorter, colder springs. Zika says 15 out of the last 20 Aprils and Mays have been recorded below normal temperature.
If we look at our warmest years here across the UP, 9 of our top 12 warmest years have occurred since 2000. And on the flip side, only 2 of our top 12 coldest years have occurred since 2000.
At the Superior Watershed Partnership on Presque Isle in Marquette, Program Manager Tyler Penrod agrees with Zika. He says the evidence is in the water.
For decades, scientists have been monitoring the temperature of Lake Superior, and it's well documented the lake is, its temperature is increasing faster than almost any lake in the world.
A recent study done by the Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife Commission shows the evidence there, while we might notice it from our place on the shoreline. In Lake Superior, summer surface waters increased about 1.4 degrees from 1985 to 2009. Zika, too, says over the last 30 years, trends show overall ice coverage on Lake Superior is decreasing. According to meteorologists at the University of Minnesota Duluth, the lake on average is 23% covered by ice in February. Come February 2023, Lake Superior only recorded 8% coverage. Zika and Penrod say signs of this change are present in recent events we've felt the consequences of, as warmer lake water drove in larger, rain-producing storms.
We've had some other very excessive, intense rainfall events that have occurred in the summertime. 2012, north of Ironwood. Last May here, even in Marquette County, while it didn't occur right over the populated area, you go up north, County Road 510 and 550, we had 4 to 6 inches of rain that fell in about 2.5 hours.
The Great Lakes region alone, he says, has recorded a nearly 10% increase in rainfall since the 1990s. Penrod says as of June, Negaunee Township, just west of Marquette, had already received about 24 of the 35 average inches of precipitation for the year. According to the National Weather Service, marking the highest total amount of precipitation in the area since 1961. Zika also attributes our more erratic fluctuations in snow to these changes.
I mean, look at how this May started this year for us as well.
From a blizzard on the first day of spring to a snowless UP 200.
You could totally look at the UP 200 as an example. Although it's just 1 year, it's a kind of a blip on the radar. It's something that you might expect to see more of going forward.
And Zika says we will continue to see more impacts.
There'll be no doubt at some point in the future that we'll see another flood like what occurred up in the Houghton Hancock area. Just because you go through 1 year that's colder, warmer, or we have one phenomenal blockbuster early May snowstorm, I mean, that's not the new norm.
TV6 continues to investigate climate change and its impact on Upper Michigan.
In the first part of our investigation, meteorologists with the National Weather Service and Superior Watershed Partnership told us climate change can be seen across the UP, including the temperature of Lake Superior.
Now, they also say climate change branches out to socioeconomic factors like fishing and agriculture. Tonight, the Superior Watershed Partnership and Michigan State University Extension scientists explain how the impacts we visited so far trickle down to agriculture.
There's a lot of cultural impacts as well and economic impacts to consider.
When one thing shifts, another thing moves. When rain falls, sun shines, and the temperature's just right, plants grow. But when there's a fluctuation over a great period of time, those who study the environment closely, like Tyler Penrod at the Superior Watershed Partnership, say it can throw off the rhythm.
Folks around here who live by the lake have seen nearly record high lake levels and nearly low record lake levels in just the last decade. Those kind of fluctuations are totally out of the typical rhythm that we've seen for Lake Superior over the last couple hundred years.
Penrod says the impacts can be felt beyond the environment, dinging economic and cultural trends. For example, he says the ice coverage on Lake Superior affects more than our winter weather. It impacts beaches and ecosystems.
That ice is really a barrier that provides protection against those strong storms. And when it's not there, it causes a lot of damage that we've seen just in the past couple of years.
One example, a decrease in whitefish.
This year especially, we had really low ice coverage on Lake Superior, and reports that the base of our food web that supports all of the fish up the chain might suffer from that lack of ice coverage. The phytoplankton weren't reproducing the numbers that they generally do in the winter.
But there's at least one group who say they found a silver lining, specifically in Upper Michigan. Farmers and agricultural researchers like James DeDecker at the Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center in Chatham.
I like the term climate haven. So when you look at the research that's been done on climate change and where impacts are going to be lesser or greater across the United States, Michigan and the Upper Peninsula are very well positioned to function as climate havens, where the changes might not be as great, or the changes that do happen may not be as detrimental because of the resource base that we're starting with as kind of our foundation.
DeDecker says that climate haven does add to the pros moving forward for the future between both researchers and farmers alike. However, the main concern is still on the plate, even out here in the fields, all the way over to the pasture.
We've seen about, on average, a 2.5 degree mean annual temperature increase in Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. So things are getting warmer. We've added about 2 to 3 weeks of frost-free growing season here in Michigan and in the UP. And that means a lot of opportunities for farmers to grow more crops, to grow a greater diversity of plants and animals that maybe we hadn't been able to produce as successfully in the past.
DeDecker says his case in point lies in a term called a hardiness zone. According to the USDA, a hardiness zone is a geographic area that has a certain average annual minimum temperature in relation to the survival of plants.
We've actually gained anywhere between 0.5 to 2 hardiness zone differences here in Michigan. And so the diversity of crops that we can grow is rapidly expanding, and that's just from the mid-1990s until today. My biggest concern is as we approach this process of adapting to climate change, where are there going to be potentially winners and losers?
And with practices like no-till farming, which focuses on keeping carbon in the soil and not tilling the land to plant crops like forages, DeDecker says as long as there's state and federal help, Upers will find a way to take advantage of the climate haven that we have.
Upers are incredibly resilient. We are great at relying on our neighbors and working together to solve problems. And so I think we'll be okay, but we also need help.
Tonight, TV6 continues to investigate climate change, its impact on Upper Michigan, and what communities are doing to address it.
So far this week, we've learned from meteorologists and researchers keeping the closest eyes on climate change and the impacts it has on Upper Michigan. We've also heard from MSU Extension scientists who are watching the effects of climate change on UP agriculture.
But what are community leaders and environmental organizations doing to help flip the script on climate change? In the final part of my investigation, I met with the Marquette City Planner and Zoning Administrator, as well as a task force addressing the issue and bringing other groups together to help.
This isn't something minor. This isn't like we're trying to take care of the spotted knapweed that's invaded.
Rising Lake Superior temperatures, eroding beach shoreline, and an issue we can't immediately see: outdated energy efficiency on roads and in buildings. It's an issue Marquette City Planner and Zoning Administrator David Stensis says is a focus of not only city commissioners, but himself.
The USDA classifies locations based on their plant hardiness. These are climatic zones. We're in a climatic zone 5 right now. They're predicting by the end of the century we'll have moved into climate zone 8, which is where, unbelievably, where northern central Georgia is right now.
Enter the city's master plan, a policy guide designed to help Marquette create an ideal path for its future. It's still being revised to begin including climate change.
The revision to the master plan we're doing now is going to highlight climate issues on just about every topic in the plan, from demographics and housing to land use.
One addition, increasing the amount of landscaping required on city property so the city can capture more storm water. Also, Stensis says the city is looking into ways to protect Marquette's existing tree canopy, working it into development regulations in the next few years. Another project on the horizon, increasing bus transit routes to lower our usage of cars and deterioration of pavement.
We've got a 30-minute transit route plan for the city. We've been trying to do that for a while, but I think it's more promising that we'll get something done in the next 5 years.
City planners are not alone. Emily Leach is not only a Marquette County senior planner, but she is the chair of the Marquette County Climate Adaptation Task Force.
We build up our environment. It's what we do as humans. We live here, we love it, sometimes we love it to death.
Leach is working to bring more organizations together as partners against climate change.
We try to work with our project partners to encourage each other to do projects. You create this base foundation of people. From there, build up and actually get the work done.
Like replanting native plants around the courthouse earlier in June, or helping the Superior Watershed Partnership and other organizations with the long-planned and ongoing efforts to restore Lakeshore Boulevard. Leach says that's a big bullet point on the task force's to-do list: make buildings throughout Marquette more energy efficient.
We will be doing an energy audit of county facilities and then figuring out what we need to do at our facilities to minimize our emissions and tighten up our buildings. You know, this courthouse was built in 1902. The annex was built in the 1970s. There are a lot of updates we can do.
Meanwhile, the Superior Watershed Partnership has been working alongside the task force in the form of the Great Lakes Climate Corps. Program Manager Tyler Penrod says 6+ crews are already planting more than 80,000 trees and 130,000 native species of wildflowers and other plants across more than 2,700 acres of public land. He says it's just the tip of the iceberg in an ever-growing network. Penrod says the Watershed Partnership is just that, making sure that they work with other organizations from across the area to keep a watchful eye on the environment, and the environment's denizens, like this blue-spotted salamander.
Marquette really has become a shining example to the country and has brought in a lot of that money to help adapt.
The climate is changing in the UP. We don't necessarily know what to expect, and that's what we're trying to plan for, is the unknown.
Well, there are many moving parts to climate change in the UP, with Stensis adding that the city is also looking into how to best utilize resources like solar energy and more into the master plan, along with factors like car charging stations. You can find out how you can help and also catch all 3 segments of this investigation on UpperMichiganSource.com.